My question is actually to Susan. I'm sorry if I'm gonna make you uncomfortable. Almost all my friends, or 9 out of 10, they don't really have a positive perception of Muslim. It's always linked to hatred or violence in the Middle East, or discrimination against women or other religions. And I know this is not right, but I suppose my question is, because my friends come from all kind of background, race, age, or even religions, but for some reason they have very similar perception about that. So I suppose my question is, do you think or do you agree this is a common perception in our society?
I think it is a common perception, and I think there have been studies that suggest that there is a negative perception about Muslims in society, and that's something that we have to work on as a collective. I don't think it's the sole responsibility of Muslims in Australia or non-Muslims. The easiest way for that to change is for your friends to actually get to know some Muslims and speak to them as human people, and move away from, you know, McDonald's journalism and that sort of thing, and taking their reports from certain newspapers and certain shows. And when that happens, and they actually speak to their Muslim neighbour over the fence, or the Muslim guy that works in the milk bar, and realise, actually, you're just normal people like us. We need to keep in mind, Muslims are not the first people to be seen like this. It's actually happened in waves. If we take Australia as the example, for a while it was this cultural community that was, demonised, the Italians, the Greeks, then it was the Vietnamese. Oh my gosh, they're all in a drug triad and they're all out to kill us and all those sort of things. It's just the Muslims' turn now. It's a pity that as Australians we haven't learned that, you know, once we get to know each other, it's okay, and then we move on to the next group that we're worried about. I hope that it would finish with Muslims. It's just, I think if we can have some human interaction, a lot of those fears and misconceptions can change.
Susan, can I just point out, when my father came here from Europe as a migrant, and then he started teaching immigrants like the Italians and Greeks, I think you're wrong. The suspicion that you say was, this is just what we're seeing, a similar version of what those immigrants faced, I think is completely wrong. That's ahistorical. It's not my experience of it. I'd also point out there are in fact more Buddhists in Australia than there are Muslims, and we don't hear anything about that. We don't invite Buddhists onto this panel, or Tony doesn't invite Buddhists onto this panel to explain. He's invited you and your husband and, you know, Miss Australia and people like that, but he doesn't do it with Buddhists. There's specifically something in the community itself as well. And I think, to be honest, you mentioned this yourself in an interview with the Malaysian Star newspaper only a couple of years ago, where you said, within the community, being a new convert from Christianity, you face the calls from within the community, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't make friends with people who weren't Muslim, and you should withdraw from society and everything that was haram. And you said this was a problem for you. And I think that's an acknowledgement that there is, in fact, a problem within the Muslim community, a rejection of strand, which is what makes this different. And I hate to be blunt. I hate to have all these people that do it. It's true. Okay. Yes, I do. I'd rather
quick responses.
The quick response would be absolutely there are people, a very small minority of people within the Muslim community that are reluctant to engage with the wider community. But this is more... There's
a majority in this interview. Excuse me, I
said the majority of Muslims reject friendships with... Well, I'm afraid I'm afraid that's just not correct. Maybe your translation from the Malay is not...
It's an English language newspaper.
Yes,
just very briefly.
Okay.
I think we're kidding ourselves if we think Australia is racked by any of the real strands of discord that you have in other countries. Of all the countries in the world, the Muslim... Christian divide here is nothing. And that's the reality. When you travel in other parts of the world, it's nothing. The reason why there is a reflection, I don't think, is about much to do with what happens here. Sure, you get the odd person who does something silly. But you see, globally, there's this fight from the Wahhabists, from the militant stream, to take out one of the big Islamic societies. There's this fracture within Islam, whether it's Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Indonesia... they're all the objectives of the Wahhabists. That's why there's a global battle going on to deal with the source of that in Afghanistan, and that's why some of that gets played back in Australia.
Okay, look, some of our audience had their hands up for a while. Just take this gentleman down the front here. Just a comment for Andrew from a non-Caucasian. I'm a Muslim and I'm trying to practice as I sometimes pray and I sometimes fast and I occasionally drink alcohol. So we are talking about we are talking about 1 billion people. We can't generalize like that. And again, just a comment that and the gentleman as well, the whole Taliban was created by American to oppose Russian. I mean, that was the whole start of the story, which built up to this issue. Of course, we should take responsibility. I agree with that. And we should basically clarify that what is the understanding that we have from Quran. But we can't just generalize like that. And please don't do that. You have the tool in the newspaper, and that's your responsibility. So please help.
I've already said, for example, I've already said that Indonesia, for example, is a standing reproof to the idea that there is a common jihadist element. I mean, there are jihadist elements in Indonesia, but it's fundamentally democracy.
Andrew, I'm going to have to get you to wrap up because we have a number of stories on fire that look like the
People vs. Mohammed went #1 on Amazon and is still on the bestseller lists. At Amazon America, reviewers of The People vs. Mohammed are saying, highly recommended. The book should be required reading. Well done to the author who, in my opinion, is brave and courageous. 5 stars. Stocks are selling so fast, Amazon is continuously restocking their inventory to keep up with demand. J.K. Scheinlin is truly overwhelmed and eternally grateful for the support received. Sadly, the author has, however, received numerous death threats because of its success. But this only shows that Muslims are truly running scared and have realized that their taqiyya deception tactics are failing. Muhammad was not the perfect human. From what we've been told by numerous subscribers, Muslims are leaving Islam because of this book, although secretly, as apostasy in Islam is certain death. Just go to jkscheinlin.com to be taken directly to the book's listing page.
Let him prove it's a religion of peace.